Today's video is on the dark blowhole from Touhou 11, Subterranean Animism. And the reason why we're covering this piece today is because it uses a lot of the modulation formulas that are native to the Touhou Project series, and an understanding of these modulation formulas will help you with other composers' work when studying Japanese video game music. So, for example, in the dark blowhole, we start out with a very typical progression of video game music, the flat 6, flat 7, 1, which has a functional system of a predominant chord moving to a dominant chord and then to a tonic function chord. And what is notable about this particular schema is that this progression starts out on predominant and ends on tonic, where most classical progressions usually start on a tonic function chord and move away from the tonic function. So this is actually sort of the reverse of what happens. Well, I guess the reverse would be starting with dominant function, but it's not quite that reversed. It's just like moved around. So the predominant is at the beginning, so it starts ambiguously and ends with the tonic function chord. And as we can see here, we have the flat 6, flat 7, 1 throughout this whole first section. It's the first and second lines are completely made out of flat 6, flat 7, 1. And let's hear how that sounds. So the flat 6, flat 7, 1s repeat. There's 3 of them, and then we get one with a 5 chord instead of a 1 chord. So that's kind of setting our expectation, then breaking the expectation with a 5 chord. And then we get this transition to an F major chord. Now I'm going to play it and just stop on the F major chord and see how this sounds. Well, I mean, out of context, that's really a big jump. We go from B major it's a tritone apart. It's like the 5 chord in our key moving to flat 2, which is a tritone apart. And that distance, that extreme distance, makes you wonder, why did Zune transition this way? Like, what is that? How does this work in context? What's the context that justifies this transition? One note about it is a dominant function chord is dominant function, and a flat 2 chord is also dominant function. So why am I saying that it's regressive? Well, it's regressive because if we continue a little bit forward, that F major chord is used in this progression. That's a flat 6, flat 7, 1. So that F major chord is functioning like a predominant chord because it's the flat 6 of a flat 6, flat 7, 1. But that makes it regressive because if the F major is predominant, then the chord before it, the B major, would be dominant. So it would be a dominant chord moving to a predominant chord, which is regressive. So how is Zune going to compose his way out of here? How does this make any sense? We're breaking the fundamental laws of music. Usually a regression will destroy all the energy of your phrase and kind of ruin it. But it doesn't. Listen to it. Really, it actually makes it more exciting. We have this B major chord. And then it goes to this F major, G major, A minor. So that should be rather regressive, but it doesn't feel that way in this instance. It actually strengthens it. So something else is going on here. I don't think this chord is this B major going to F. I think this is the wrong way of analyzing this. I think that the B major is a distraction, and we just got C, D, E 3 times, and then we got that B major. I think it's this chord that's important, this one right here, which would be 1 to flat 2, right? I made it a major one, but it's actually a minor one. So, for example, now if we take this chord and then go to the F major, it's like the 1 chord going to flat 2. And that's what I hear. I hear flat 6, flat 7, 1, flat 2, and then that becomes flat 6, flat 6, flat 7, 1. That's what I'm hearing. So I hear this sort of as like a deceptive cadence, like a 5 going to flat 6. That's like a 5 going to flat 6, like in a deceptive cadence. So now there's a minor 2 between this, and it's progressive. It's no longer regressive. And it's not regressive because a 1 going to flat 2 is not regressive. It would be a tonic function going to dominant function. But if we remember, the F major is functioning as a predominant chord in context. And as a result, it's actually a tonic function chord going to a predominant function chord, which is progressive and actually would create energy. When you have a tonic function chord going to a predominant function chord, that creates motion forward, right? We have that B major, even though it's a dominant function chord, it's replacing a tonic function chord. It replaced, we did this C, D, E progression, C, D, E minor. And E minor was the chord that occurred in the 3rd position every time. And then we get a 5 chord for contrast. And then he treats it like it's still the 1 chord and then moves up. It moves from 1 to flat 2 and then changes that to flat 6. So that's kind of a long-winded way to explain it. But that's important to understand if you want to understand the next part of the piece. I'm calling this a 1 flat 6 of 4. And a 1 flat 6 of 4 is when you go from the 1 chord and you go up to flat 2, and then flat 2 becomes flat 6. And Zun's music is mostly made up of flat 6, flat 7, 1. The point of this progression is to do a flat 6, flat 7, 1, and then be able to perform another flat 6, flat 7, 1 to get you to another key. In this case, we're modulating to the key of 4. So you would go flat 6, flat 7, 1. And then you go to flat 2. So flat 6, flat 7, 1, flat 2. So you go flat 6, flat 7, 1. Like that. And now we're in the key of 4. So flat 6, flat 7, 1. Da 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 ba ba. Da 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 da. Right, flat 6, flat 7, 1, flat 2, flat 3, 4. So I'm going to call this a Touhou modulation because it uses flat 6, flat 7, 1, which is the quintessential Touhou progression, in order to modulate to another key. And there's a bunch of different progressions that Zun uses that are Touhou modulations. And I will talk about every single one of them on this channel. This is Touhou Fundamentals 1. So it's important to understand each modulation strategy that Zun uses throughout his career. And in this video, we're going to be talking about two of them. This is the first one. I call this one the 1 flat 6 of 4. And it's either a minor 1 or it's a major 1 flat 6 of 4. You could go flat 6, flat 7, 1. And if you do the major chord, it connects better to the flat 6 of 4. So we have flat 6, flat 7, 1, and then we go up to flat 2. That's that. I mean, the movement is really pretty. We get flat 6, flat 7, 1, and we go up to flat 6 of 4. Flat 6, flat 7, 1 of 4. It's pretty wonderful. So now let's talk about the B section. In that section, we start with flat 6, flat 7, 1. Do da ba ba na 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 da do da ba ba. And then we get which feels like sort of a flat 6, flat 7, 1, doesn't it? But it can be mapped onto tonal space. I mean, in this case, so you have da da ma ma da da ba ba. We're on 1, and then we go to flat 3. This is like the flat 3 chord. This is like the major 4 chord. And then this is like the 5 chord, right? And then the 5 chord can go back to flat 6. Resetting the progression. So it's a loopable progression. We go da da ma ma da 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 da. And then that's the 5 chord, so that can then go back to flat 6. Da 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 da. And then that's 5 again, so then we can go back to flat 6. We land on 1, da-da-da, flat 3, 4, and then we get the 5 chord, which then can go back to flat 6. So it can just keep looping over and over and over again, and he designed it this way. But how does it work? This 5 chord resolves deceptively up to flat 6. Like that. This is what I call a flip on flat 3. You have a flat 6 chord that goes to flat 7 and then to 1. So a normal flat 6, flat 7, 1. But then you go to flat 3. And then flat 3 is going to become flat 6. And then you're going to go to flat 7, which is major 4. And then you're going to go to 5, which would be major 1. So it'd be kind of like the Picardy third variant of a flat 6, flat 7, 1. And this 4 is unusual because, I mean, if we were in a minor key, it would sound like this. You know, the da da ma ma na 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 da do da ba ba. Those are all in a minor key, so that works. But then we'd have to change it to this, da 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 da, which makes this feel like less of a like a bright cadence. Now it feels like we're more in the key of A minor. But that probably was very disturbing to you. I played that and you probably went, wow, that sucks. And the reason why it sucks is because it destroys the flat 6, flat 7, 1 relation that we were just talking about, right? We have da da na na da 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 ma da 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 da, right? Da 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 feels like a flat 6, flat 7, 1. But if we make that a D minor chord instead, da da ba, it just feels like flat 3, minor 4, 5, which then goes to 1. It feels more, it gets rid of the ambiguity of it, which is so much worse, isn't it? I mean, it loses something as a result of that happening. And this sort of harmony only works when you're dealing with root position triads. Well, you can actually change the position. It doesn't really matter what position they're in. But the most important thing is that they have to be triads. If you try to do this with 7 chords and stuff like that, it actually is impossible because the extensions will reveal too much information. This only works because we're working with these very basic triads, which are rather ambiguous. So looking at this bottom line, we can see that it's a flat 6, flat 7, 1. The feels like a flat 6, flat 7, 1. And we can see that these Roman numerals show that. We have the flat 6 on the flat 3 chord, we have the flat 7 on the 4 chord, and we have the 5 chord, the major 5 chord, where the minor 5 chord would be if we were still in modal minor. But if this is flat 6, flat 7, 1, doesn't that change the functional context that we're dealing with? Instead of being tonic function moving to predominant function, moving to dominant function, it would actually switch around, and you'd start with a predominant function and you'd end with a tonic function chord. But isn't that weird? Look at the dominant function chord gets replaced with a tonic function chord. Now hold on. If a dominant function chord gets replaced with a tonic function chord, doesn't that create a compositional thing that's sort of weird? I mean, what happens to the energy? Does it function like a tonic function chord or a dominant function chord? Which one would win out? Well, in this case, I feel like you hear both. Right, that's pretty stable, the 1 chord. That feels like flat 3. That feels like flat 7, or it could also be the major 4 chord. That feels like the 5 chord. But it also feels like the 1 chord. You got the da 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 da. You could end the piece there. It's such a final sounding thing. So it's a weird situation in which a dominant function chord overlaps, like contextually, with a tonic function chord, creating this cognitive dissonance where you hear both and your mind kind of switches between them. It's a cool psychological effect, and Zune is using this modulation that I call a flip-on flat 3. This is the quintessential flip-on flat 3. I think it's the best example of it in all of Touhou. And so this one is interesting because it uses the Picardy 3 variant, which makes it feel even more like a tonic function chord. If let's say he did this instead. Now it connects smoother to that, but it's not as tonic function sounding. That feels more final than. And look, he even emphasizes it melodically. He does a little bit of a suspension down into it. Really paying attention to the fact that it's a major chord, which makes it sound more like it's a tonic function chord. And then we get that deceptive cadence bringing us back to A minor. It's a pretty ingenious loop. So now let's think about it in the key of E minor. If we look at this phrase not starting in A minor, but starting in E minor, then we can retroactively look at the chords at the beginning, the F major, G, A minor, see what that would be. So if we're going to start our analysis from the C major chord in the B section, then it would be flat 6, flat 7, 1. That's how it would start out. And then major 1 would go to flat 2, which is exactly the thing I said happened before with the E minor chord going to the F major chord at the beginning of the B section. So this is kind of retreading that idea from the beginning of the piece, except this time we have an E major chord, which makes it feel even more E-centric. So this one chord goes to flat 2, which becomes flat 6, and then there's a flat 6, flat 7, 1. So let's listen to that. Da 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 ba 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 da da ma ma na 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 da da ba ba. So it goes da 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 na na da 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 ba ba. It's our one chord, and then we go up to flat 2, and then this becomes our flat 6. And then we do a flat 6, flat 7, 1. Da 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 na 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 da da ba ba. So this is a 1 flat 6 of 4, which is the exact same modulation we had at the beginning of the piece with the E minor chord, but this time we have an E major chord. If you look at the chart for the 1 flat 6 of 4, the third chord has a 1 in parentheses. Well, that 1 is that situation where you have a major chord before the modulation rather than a minor chord like we did in the A section. So far in the piece we have a lot of modulations already. We have a 1 flat 6 of 4, bringing us to the key of A minor. Then we have a flip on flat 3, bringing us to the key of E major. And then we have another 1 flat 6 of 4, bringing us back to the key of A minor. And then it's going to happen again because it repeats. So in this little amount of music, we've already had 3 full modulations. And in fact, if we repeat the B section, then it's more like 5 modulations because that section repeats. When you listen to the piece initially, you might not think that in the first couple seconds of the piece there is 5 separate modulations, but there is. And let me play that in full so that you can really appreciate it. And look at the amount of flat 6, flat 7, 1s. This is a flat 6, flat 7, 1. This is a flat 6, flat 7, 1. This is a flat 6, flat 7, 1. This is flat 6, flat 7 and goes to 5. This is flat 6, flat 7, 1. And this is a flat 6, flat 7, 1. Wow. Okay. So it's all flat 6, flat 7, 1 pretty much. This is pretty typical of Zun's music. He pretty much only uses 2 or 3 progressions in all of his music and just slightly changes it. Or, I mean, once in a while he'll do some non-functional sort of chordal stuff where he moves around. Something like that. But he's mainly using these functional ideas with triads, right? He's functionally altering the context of triads. That is how Zun writes most of his music. Now let's look at this transition. We have this. And then from this one chord, he goes to the relative minor. He's on that E major chord. And then he just moves to the relative minor. So he goes through this R transition to get to the relative minor. And then he stays in the relative minor and does a doo-wop progression, but specifically the minor key variant of a doo-wop progression. Which is just the functional tonic, and then you go down kind of like in descending thirds, and then you hit the 5 chord. This was like an overused progression back in like the 50s. And then the piece ends with just the B section again. This time in G minor, and then with the flip on flat 3, we end up in D major. And then it just directly modulates back to the... So that's the whole piece in its entirety. There's a lot of repetition, and there's a lot more modulation that goes on than what initially seems present when you first listen to it. It sounds like a bunch of rock music stuff kind of put together in some way, and it sort of sounds like what a lot of composers were doing back in the 70s with like rock music. It sounds like Hall & Oates almost, but he changes little things. He changes his rule set a bit. He's very strict with this flat 6, flat 7, 1. He's very intentional with his use of different modulation formulas of using flat 6, flat 7, 1 in order to imply separate contexts at the same time. Almost like simultaneities, like I talked about in my last video. This video explains 2 out of, a couple of the modulation formulas I'm going to talk about on this channel and hopefully publish on later on. This is all research that's unpublished at this point, but I need to talk about it because the next video that I'm doing is the chrono trigger theme, and it requires a little bit of this logic. So if I don't do this, then I can't do that. So it's, I'm willing to explain all this stuff. Just pay me money. Also for this video, I 1cc'd Subterranean Animism on easy mode, which, yell at me for playing on easy mode, but Subterranean Animism is not a fun game. All the shot types are tough. None of them are easy. I was using the Magic Missile Marsa for it. Wasn't even worth it. No, it wasn't bad. It took me like 3 tries. But yeah, once I had the right character, once I had Magic Missile Marsa, it was pretty easy. I won it with like 4 lives. It's like, wow, that wasn't that bad. Just Reimu sucks. Reimu doesn't suck at all the games. It's just, whatever. SA is tough. Okay, that's it for now. See you in 2 weeks when I talk about Chrono Trigger. Good evening.